Good morning. Hi, hello at the back. Hi. I'm Dan. I work at a company called Innocent. It's a small business that got bigger. Do you know what Innocent is? Put your hand up if you know what Innocent is. If you don't know what Innocent is, put your hand up. Great. This one's for you two. 3. This one's for you 3. Everyone else. Some of you may have even heard me do this before, so I swore that before I came to talk today. I met David many years ago when Innocent was a very small business, and David's previous business was very small. So it is lovely to be invited back by David and his family, and this big family. But I vowed that I wouldn't talk about the same old shit that I always talk about. And I vowed that because David tells you that you can't do that in the rules of the Do Lectures. So let's see how we go. So wander with me, if you will, because I don't know what I'm doing. I started working at Innocent 16 years ago. I'm still there, and I still kind of get there every morning and go, right, what are we doing? How does this work? I don't really understand business. I don't profess to have any great knowledge of anything in particular. I studied geography at university, so I know a bit of stuff about the Little Ice Age. It's mainly where I focus my efforts. The collapse of social democracy in Sweden, the late 80s. So if you want to have a chat about those later, I'm well up for that. Short conversation probably. I came last year to. You can't see. It might be a bit dark, but I came last year. I helped a friend who was doing a talk here last year. I looked like a freak. I had this big beard and I had my arm in a sling, and so this year I thought I'd come back looking like a different person to see if different things would happen. So I've cleaned myself up, but I've been doing the same thing for 16 years. So who here has been doing the same job in the same business with the same people for that period of time? It's quite an interesting thing to see. So not so many. And I think part of my struggle, part of my internal challenge is probably about I think your life kind of goes like that, right? I don't think anyone's life kind of just goes on this sort of upward trajectory. I think life goes like this. Probably once every year, my wife would probably say every sort of September, I kind of go, I really hate it. This sucks. This whole successful growing business thing really sucks. I need to go and do something else. And she kind of says, it's September. It's your moment. Go somewhere, go and have a think and come back. And I come back from wherever it is I go, maybe to the pub or the shops, and then I'm okay again. But it does. I think life's like a wave. Is there a thing called a sine wave? Yeah, that's what life's like. So that's the end of the talk. I think what I've loved about being Innocent, amongst other things that I'll come on to in a minute, and there is some stuff hopefully that will help other people and not just me, like talking about myself. Is that I like the bits where there isn't a plan, and a lot of what we've done as a business has been massively unplanned. So you may get the impression from maybe if you've ever read about the business or read a story that we knew what was going on all the time at all points, and honestly, if you see other people from the business on the TV, Richard is the person that goes on TV the most. Like he goes on Newsnight now. Like, who the fuck is asking him to go on? And he's talking about politics. He was on there the other day talking about the EU, and I was like, mate, you don't know anything about the EU. But obviously he does. I can mock him. He's my friend. But I'm still amazed that you get to a point in your life where suddenly You're the grown-ups. You're proffering opinions on stuff that's really important and might mean something. And so I find that quite amusing. There's a duality, I think, in terms of plan versus no plan. And I can boil it down to Kevin Costner, as I can most things. My mate challenged me years ago, mate, you've got to put more Costner into your presentation. So I was like, yeah, I can do that. And so if Costner's not in your sort of cultural region, then I apologise. But I think for most of us, he's been a constant in our lives. You have the Costner of Waterworld. So Waterworld, who's seen Waterworld? Wow. Like, it always amazes me because like people kind of badmouth it, but then everyone's seen it. So Waterworld, at the time it was made, was a massively well-planned product. Like, you know, it's the most expensive movie ever made at the time. $175 million, I think it cost to make. Original budget, $100 million. It was kind of filmed in these pens that they created somewhere in the Pacific, these massive, you know, in open sea. And, you know, Costner, it was like a pet personal project of his. I think towards the end of it, he actually sacked the director and he directed the massive climax because everyone else had grown to sort of hate him so much, including the director, that he was the only person that could actually finish the film. And it was a disaster, right? It didn't make the money back. I think the only way it made money back in the end was that they built a Waterworld ride at Universal Studios that's still there, and that's what made the money back. But the film's a proper turkey. But I bet when they were planning it, they just thought, oh, this is, you know, it's got everything, right? It's got Costner, he's got gills, it's in the ocean, it's Mad Max meets, you know, some crappy old pirate film. Whereas Costner at his best is wandering around in a cornfield, not knowing what he's doing. Right? The Field of Dreams is, as a film and as an idea, is the most beautiful thing. Is build it and they will come. Right? And that's all I think I ever try to do at work, and all I ever try to instill in the teams and the people that I work with is that don't look to me for an idea or plan, because you'll probably get nothing, right? But I might be able to tell you what I've screwed up before. I might be able to tell you a couple of things that worked, and let me take you through the cornfields with Costner. And let's see what happens. Let's see if like a baseball stadium just appears in the middle of nowhere. Does everyone understand what I'm talking about? Have people seen Field of Dreams? Can we just do a quick vote? Better film, Waterworld? Yeah. Field of Dreams? Yeah, come on. Oh, and some people don't like either of them. Tin Cup? Yeah, Tin Cup. Good. Dances with Wolves, I can do all of them. Yeah. No Way Out's great, yeah. But then he's kind of in a normal setting. It's much better when he's dancing with wolves. I looked for a quote about feelings, because I realised I did one of those sort of personality test things at work once where they say, are you a person that says I think or I know or I feel, you know, I think people can ascertain what kind of person you are from that verb, and all I ever say is feel. I rarely know anything. I just say I feel like this will work. I feel like this will be good. So I look for something that's talked about feelings. I approach everything in my life the same way. If it feels right, I know it. And you all know who said that, right? There's Kenny Mother Heckin' G. Kenny G, jazz master. I tried last night to find an MP3 of Kenny G so that when this happened, the love theme from Titanic would come on with him playing the saxophone, but I couldn't sort it out. So just imagine that in your heads. So this is innocent, right? This is what we make drinks. We are known for having jokes. We're known for jokes, right? We make great products, but sadly, we're known for jokes. We're known for silly stuff that's on the back of the label, or you know, antics, I guess, is what we're best known for. But antics and stupidness and lightness and humour, I think, have helped us become a bigger business. This is a spreadsheet, so thought I'd do battle with the prof and show some data. It won't last, I can tell you that. This is how we chose the name Innocent. Some of you might have seen this before. I've shown this spreadsheet many times, but this is small type, but shows you how to use Excel in the naming of your brands. If any of you are thinking of starting a business, and I know Do Lectures is where ideas spring from. People go off and leave this place and start things, which is an amazing thing. So what you need to do is get Excel out, get a thesaurus, just line up all the possible names, have your criteria, communicates the nature of the drink, is not too fashionable, intangible cool factor. I mean, how awful is that? And then score it, and then obviously ignore it and choose the one that has about the fourth best score. Because that's what we did. Otherwise, we would have been called. Well, I always like to think we could have been called Babylon, which is the best and worst name on there, or Nostrum. Nostrum. But the way that Innocent started is that it's a story that we tell too much because it's a good story, but also in the telling of it, it kind of becomes anything that gets told a lot becomes a myth or a little legend, and but it's true. Like, we went to a small music festival, a little jazz festival in West London, and we asked the public to vote. This is at a point where we're down to our last few £100. We hadn't launched anything. This is testing the drinks out on normal people before we'd launched, and we had a stall at a festival, and we said, do you think we should give up our day jobs over the stall? And we had a yes bin and a no bin at the ends, and people came, tasted these drinks that we'd made in the kitchen of a flat in Barons Court in West London, and people tested them out and voted through their empties, mainly into the yes bin, right? And that's true, that happened. That was actually the catalyst for resigning from our old jobs and starting Innocent. That was August 1998. Innocent now is it's a big business. I was just in Helsinki, talking to a ton of people about how they're going to grow the Innocent brand, the business in Finland. Why do Finnish people want our stupid business? Want our stupid products? I found it. This is all being filmed as well, and someone at our place will watch this and go, "Why do you keep calling everything stupid? You're supposed to be out there selling stuff, you idiot." I still find it surprising when I turn up in another country and people go, "Oh, I like that." I still find it surprising if I go on a trip. So I go to Stockholm on a nice weekend, maybe with my wife, and you land and walk through the airport, and I see Innocent in the fridge, and I kind of go. And she says, "But you knew they were there." And I'm like, "I knew they were there. We sell X thousand units a day in Sweden." But I still go, "Oh, God." If I'm on a tube and I see someone drinking an Innocent drink, I talk to them. It's it's awkward, but it's the most. I remember the day when I knew how many we'd sold because I drove the van that delivered them to the wholesaler, and they were all the drinks in the world that we had. So even when I see one in the wild, it's still a thing that I love. So I'm animating this. This isn't in the show. I find this really funny that we went from that day on Parsons Green in London, testing them out, and 13 years later we were an Olympic sponsor. So that's the funniest leap for Innocent, I think, of all, is that you become, I think, the youngest ever business to sponsor the Olympics, the biggest show on earth. You become the only truly London-born business of the London Games. And I was wandering around, so I did two really embarrassing things at the Olympics. One was just generally doing my Stockholm airport thing, but in the Olympic Park, getting there and seeing one of our big juice bars and kind of going, "Oh." And yeah, again, I already knew it was there, but I still. And then the other thing that I've never told anyone before, was so Thomas Heatherwick, the amazing designer, architect, genius, designed the Olympic torch, the thing that kind of came up like that beautifully in the opening ceremony, and lit. And I really like him, but because I've seen him speak a few times, and I went to the rehearsal of the opening ceremony, which was an amazing experience because it was one of those things that you went to, but you weren't allowed to tell anyone anything about it because it was 2 days before the proper one. So you weren't allowed to take photos. It's an interesting digression, actually. It had to work on trust. There were these big signs up saying, hashtag save the surprise. Because they were worried that everyone was just going to go, oh, Instagram, look, it's the Olympics. Because it would have spoiled it for the whole world. So everyone behaved themselves and didn't spread the word. But I got a bit drunk there because I can't remember who the Olympic sponsor for beer was, but they were great. And in the stadium, I loved the show. And then afterwards, I was walking outside the stadium and I saw Thomas Heatherwick. And I went up, I just grabbed him and I went, I love you. And that was my embarrassing Olympic moment. And then I went to see him afterwards and sober and we had a chat about some stuff. But and I apologise for being drunk near him. So I don't know if you can see these characters. I've got about 3 or 4 things that I think have stood me, our business in good stead. Well, one of the most important things is being clueless, is not knowing what you're doing, I think, in the endeavour of building something human and great that people love. You know these gentlemen. Do you know these gentlemen? Can you see their faces? Who is it? Can anyone tell? It's the Beastie Boys. Good, it's the Beastie Boys. Yeah, all the cultural references come from a very specific period, you'll notice. It's the Beastie Boys, but he's the one that's interesting, right? That's Rick Rubin. That's Rick Rubin now. So Rick Rubin found the Beastie Boys. The Beastie Boys were a stupid, rubbish skate punk band. And he said, you guys, I'm going to turn you into the first white hip hop group, and you're going to be massive. Oh, and I'm going to start a record label called Def Jam. And then I'm going to get a bit older and grow an immaculate sort of setup around here. And I'm also, I think in the last couple of years he's produced, I think something like in the top 10 albums that sell in the world, I think about 5 of them are Rick Rubin's. Produced the last Adele album, the last Kanye West album. He has unique recording techniques where he seems to just lock people in recording studios and give them food through a hatch, but doesn't really let them out until they finish. That's what he did with Kanye West, because I don't think he actually liked him, but he wanted him to make the music, and the money was probably good. So he just locked him in the studio. There's a great story about it. But when you read about or hear an interview with him, and they ask him, because nerdy music people ask him, like, how do you do it? Like, how do you make the sound so good, Rick? And his answer is, well, I have no idea. Like, he can't operate any of the machinery. He's a record producer who can't produce records. Yeah, which maybe it's just me, but it gives me massive hope. He's seen as the best, maybe the best ever. He's the guy that dragged Johnny Cash out of his advanced sort of late middle-aged torpor and said, mate, you need to make some records again, and made those amazing recordings before Johnny Cash died. To be that great and to find the right people and to make such great stuff but not know what you're doing, like I said, gives me hope. One thing that innocent as that we get told is, oh, you guys have such a great tone of voice. Tone of voice, like, what is that all about? I find that perplexing. I remember a man who was writing a book about tone of voice got in touch with us. I mean, tone of voice is just crap jokes, right? That's all it is. Or speaking like you would normally speak, not succumbing to thinking that you have to turn into anyone else. My ambition is that anything that we do should just be recognisable. It should come from us. That's all it has to do. It's not that complicated. It's the same way that if you watch a Wes Anderson film, if you watch the first, probably a minute, you're like, oh yeah, Wes Anderson film. Like, you just know it has the texture. The same way that a Woody Allen film works, right? You've got, neurotic, Jewish, New Yorker, can't get laid. That's probably in the first 90 seconds, and you know where you are, and you're comfortable in his universe. Now you can choose whether you love that universe or not, but it's always going to be his way, his tone of voice, his way of speaking. And I like businesses. I like people who I can rely on to be consistent and that sound the way that they act, and the way the people in the business are the same way that they sound, which leads to a relationship that is normal and human that you have with people. So, so here, okay, let's think. Who could just shout out their favourite brand very quickly, or favourite company, or favourite provider of something? Patagonia. I knew it'd be first here. Is that like a sponsor? Is that a sponsor thing? It's a massively Patagonia heavy crowd. What was that? Beer bods? Did I hear you say beer bods? Okay. Sorry, Matt. This might be a bit of a setup for you. All Patagonia. So, think Patagonia, beer bods, all the usual massive corporations. How many? Think of that company that you love. It might be Toyota, might be the is it British Sugar, might be whoever it is. How many of you have sent them a tapestry? So there's a thing, right, where a lady sent us a tapestry. Like we never asked for tapestries. You know, we have some sort of we have a nice bit on the back of the labels that says, you know, if you're bored, give us a ring or email us, or you know, which is kind of the subtext is all complaints must be directed to this email address, you know. But we just made it sound a bit nicer. And a lady took that to mean that she should send us a tapestry. And I've been since told it's not a tapestry, it's quilting, but. She's done it a couple of times, and people send us all sorts of other stuff, you know, picture of hamster in box, or homemade hot water bottle cover with branded thing. And I'm curious. I'm curious. We're a business. We make fruit juice, right? We make fruit juice and smoothies and other, you know, drinks. But people have said, oh, they're the guys that I send the tapestries to, you know. And so at what point did that become a thing? What did we say to her? What did we do in the world to make her think that's what I'm going to do this evening? You know, I'm not going to watch TV. I'm going to make the quilt that those guys are going to hang up in their office. And obviously, if you overanalyze these things, then you'll never get any tapestry. You know, you'll never get a tapestry if you try to get a tapestry. I'm just like, so if anyone's writing notes on how to get a tapestry, stop now. It'll never happen. But I do think it's the way that we've spoken and the way we've acted towards people that has encouraged them to do this stuff. But I still don't know why they did it. Maybe one reason they did it is because we did things that I don't think made much sense. So we used to do big music festivals in London. It was called Fruitstock. We did it for about 5 years. In the last year we did it before the police and the council banned us from ever doing a festival in London again. We had 160,000 people came. So it's bigger than Glastonbury that year. It's the biggest festival in Europe that year. It was free, and we had no idea what we were doing. If you imagine who thinks they're the stupidest person in this room? Right. I'm stupider, and stupider, and I was one of the key people who organised the festival for 160,000 people in the middle of London, and it was free, and it was. It could have been a proper disaster. As it was, it just about worked, but there were reasons why the police and Camden Council stopped us from ever doing that again. Something we did a couple of weeks ago, actually, that was much more interesting to me was a festival that we're not allowing anyone to talk about. It's much more fun because that was kind of big and just kind of pre-Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. So people couldn't really talk about that. So we've continued that tradition by telling people that they couldn't take photos, they couldn't use their phones, they couldn't Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, do whatever the other thing is that's probably cooler than that now. At this, we just had about 2,000 people in the woods, and they're not allowed to talk about it. Now, I have no idea if that's any good or not. I mean, if someone was pitching it to me from an agency, I'd go, rubbish. Like why? Like, why would you do that? Like, you know, if nobody's going to talk about it, and nobody can show their friends if it was any good. It's like, well, I don't know. I still think it might be a rubbish idea. But it might be great, but you know, you never know. But for me, it boils back down to there's an element of witchcraft in business, I think. What may appear obvious to you, to someone else appears like witchcraft. You know, I get quite a lot of people from other businesses or other organisations who will come to me and ask me about, like, you know, that it's amazing the fact that you write funny stuff on the back of the cartons. That's a really important part of what you do, isn't it? Because it really engages with people. I'm like, I have no idea. Again, I've no idea if it's important or not. Like, it's a laugh, and it feels like fun. And if we stop doing it, it'd be a bit weird now. But other people see it as, oh, you guys really knew what you were doing at the beginning. It's like, no, we didn't. The first label designs had all the stuff that you would imagine that you would need on a label of a product, and then when we put all the sort of statutory stuff on, there was a big gap. We were like, oh, what do you do? What do you put in the gap? And of course, in the gap, the first labels had this really sort of tentative bleat almost on them, which was like, hello? You know, somebody might read this, maybe. I mean, somebody might buy it at first. That was the weirdest thought. And then, you'd buy it and then read it and then send us a tapestry, like, you know. So I think whatever it's weird. You should kind of guard your witchcraft, and you should you know, practice that art more and more and harder, because the one thing that people ask you about the most, they find weird, is probably the thing that you do best. Just thinking about friends, like, I was always more Chandler than Joey, but I don't. Cheap friends joke. I think it was really very important for us to start a business as friends. I really admire people who start something by themselves. I find they're the people that I find to be the most heroic and insane, and probably making it like hard work for themselves. Because if I look at great enterprises, somewhere at the heart of it, there's friendship. And I think that, you know, there's these two, like, they were friends. I mean, friends fall out as well, right? That happens. Innocent, we haven't fallen out yet. But, you know, some friends fall out. These two remained friends for quite a while. I mean, drugs usually screw things up, and controlling wives. But that's why they fell out, I think. But I read this the other day. Is this too small to see? Should I read it out? Okay, I read it out. I thought it was really nice. I was trying to find two people who started something together and actually said something nice about each other, because, you know, when you hear Wozniak talk about Jobs, it's always a bit. It's like, yeah, he's such an amazing guy, but I actually invented the computers. It's just usually a bit of a dig. But he was head of a large company with offices in 3 cities. He was the father of 5 children. He was a performer, a writer, a producer, a television director, a motion picture director, a businessman, a creator, a visionary. And with all this, he always managed to have fun. During a recording day, he would feel responsible for keeping things moving. So he'd be the serious one while we performers clowned around between takes. He would often get impatient with us, which usually meant he would quietly clear his throat and shift his weight on his stool. That's when we knew we should get to work. But then he couldn't help himself, and he'd join in the silliness until he cried from laughter, and then he would look at his watch and bring us back on course. But he always had a gift for allowing chaos, and through the chaos, guiding us to a better result. Like, any idea who that is? Like, the two most awesome friends who had I think the most fun. So that was Frank Oz on Jim Henson, and they as friends, like, I definitely think they got to work thinking, oh my God, are we actually being paid for this? Yeah, this is, you know, there are some, I'd never seen the photos before, you might have seen them, of when they did all the puppetry for Star Wars. And there was a day when they brought all the Muppets puppets to the set. So there's a set of photos of Miss Piggy doing, like, weird stuff with Yoda, but there's such an amazing set of photos. I urge you to seek them out. But I thought it was lovely, and those guys stayed friends. The other guys that I love was Siskel and Ebert, the film critics. Like, reading about their friendship was quite sort of quite tight, and they had their differences, but they sort of made something out of nothing. And another two guys who probably thought, what, we're getting paid for like watching movies and then moaning about them? I mean, geez. I read a lot about failure. You may have already discussed failure a fair bit here. I always find it a bit weird to talk about failure because and people talk about failing forward. Have you heard that phrase? Like fail forward, fail fast, all that stuff. I'm like, wow, I'm less. To be honest, I'm less about failing. A little bit less than is the current orthodoxy, and I think it's because I don't even think you should think of anything as a failure. Even the failure is success. Like you were there, you breathed, you got out of bed, you did something. I refuse to see anything as a failure. I mean, or actually, I think you look back and see your whole life as a failure because there'll be stuff that you didn't do. This man, Adam, I won't talk too long about him because I've had the flashing beacon down here, who was the first proper intelligent person we ever hired, and it was after a while. And he had a super professional background and knew loads of stuff. And we had the future of the business depended on his big marketing idea, whatever that would be. And he came into work one day and he knitted a hat. And he said, look, like he got us all together and he went, look. We're like, oh, what? And so like, yeah, I've knitted a hat. And we're like, oh, you've knitted a hat. Mr. PhD, he had a PhD from Oxford. And he'd worked for a really big company that made stock cubes. We had a lot of hope for him, and his big idea was little knitted hats on bottles. And we all told him it was a rubbish idea. We all told him every reason why it wouldn't work. And it's the biggest, best thing that we still do. We run it in every country. We do it for charity. It is a massive project. It sells a shed load of drink. Like, you want a marketing tip today? Put hats on things. I've got a graph. I've got a bullshit graph that will show you that when you put a hat on something, it will start selling much better. Much like the professor's graph. Except he wants to go like reduce stuff, and I want more hats. Rather than failure, I'm just like do stuff faster. Like failure is just a byproduct of that, right? I'm not even interested in whether it worked or didn't work. Really, it's like the more stuff you do, you're bound to strike on a hat at some point. You're bound to get there, and in the end, stuff just feels right? Sometimes the inner Costner, you'll know if it feels right or not. Like, you'll know, I haven't got time to talk about these guys, but Longer Burger is a business in America, and they make baskets and they work in a giant yellow basket, right? That felt right. That felt right. And there was, there's no rhyme or reason why that should work better than the other thing, but I think that felt right, I think a much smaller example is that our phone, the sacred phone that all calls come through is shaped like a banana. That felt right. I mean, that's not in a business plan. This place feels right. This felt like the right thing to do. The tapestry felt right. He feels right. Like he feels like it flows up through his toes and into his big head, and it feels right. And it felt right for them, and it felt right for them, and it felt right for him. Thanks.